like, how can it be random? Like, I understand opinion, I understand everything else, but how can you have this like slant? And then how can you say one system go, well, you know, I looked at the game and Halo 3 and, you know, Mass Effect and all this stuff really, you know, changed my perspective on the game. And the other console doesn't have those games.
Right.
And yet you just like it's got to be about the end user. I remember I grew up in the middle of like nowhere, Colorado, right? So, you know, I think you're a Kansas boy or something.
I'm a Nebraska boy.
Nebraska,
yeah,
all right.
Midwest.
It's all the flyover state.
Flyover state, doesn't matter.
Oh, we got some cornfields. Fucking right on.
Center pivot sprinklers just going around.
Football team.
But I think that one of the things that I remember of growing up was like my family couldn't afford every system that was out there. Like, man, it was like the Sega Nintendo wars back then. You know,
It was much more hardcore.
you were
back
one,
then.
and that's what you were, and you had to
Yes.
live and die by that
Yes.
decision. And so I think that a lot of users are going to have the same experience because I don't
That's a
know
great
about
point.
everybody, but hell, dude, I'm going to have to swallow a pill buying a Wii and a 360.
Don't buy a Wii.
And a PS3, and then I'm like, oh, I need Rock Band, and you know, like all these
Yeah.
other things. Like suddenly, I'm made of money. Like that's not the way it is. Like, I gotta like make some commitments early on. And so if I committed to a PlayStation 3, I think that, you know, the FPSs on a PlayStation 3 thus far have not really, you know, pushed the barrier as far as what I'd like for it to. Haze fell out of the year. You got Mass Effect, which is 360 only. You got Halo 3, which is obviously 360 only. And you got, like, you know, Orange Box trailing the release of what you had on the other platforms. And so it's the kind of thing where, as a PS3 owner, I want some shit to play. You know, and so I need to, like, take what I'm getting and really, like, bite into it and go, wow, you know, hey, sweet, there's a game that's, you know, let me slow stop and reverse time, or really took advantage of online. We let people make their own gameplay modes and shit like that. And we did those things not because they're bullet points on a box, right? Because believe me, like, try to sit down and talk with some marketing points, folks, about, all right, so check this out, dude. You can make your own gameplay modes. You know, when your friend's like a camping bitch and comes over and can't do anything, they're like, you had me at get this. Like, I started
you lost
zoning
me at
in.
get
like,
this.
I don't know what you're talking about. I make boxes, you know. I don't know what goes on. So we did those things for gamers, right? Specifically gamers in flyover states and gamers who like have committed to one system and want to keep something fresh and alive when their buddies come over to their house and they network all their stuff together or play over the internet.
Fucking good old days, dude.
That's for like users. Because I'm rapidly starting to wonder if I should continue to commit to listening to the press.
Well,
I think you should listen to what you believe in. That's what I think.
I mean, even though we are press, you know, I would like to say that we're an alternate type of press, and we stopped listening a long time ago.
We're just in an entertainment form that speaks about video games.
I feel like it's very, and it's actually one of the things that we wanted to talk about, but I think you would be, you know, very beneficial to yourself to not listen to the press, because it seems like, you know, you mentioned it as well. There's no uniform criteria for this or that, and they give no explanation for waning scores from here to there, and it just really seems like an abomination that the games industry is turning into.
I think that might be a bit further than where I'm ready to commit yet.
Well, that's
right.
Abomination.
I think that, you know, like the recent stuff that hit just today, I think, or yesterday with the 1UP post.
With the GameSpot guy, right? That got fired over Kane and Lynch.
Yeah, over, you know, you slam a game, you give it a 60, publisher pulls out, and then, you know, you get fired. There's a whole nebulous territory, right? Because there's two sides to every story, right?
Of course.
Are you going to, like, what was his track record as an employee? I mean, was this the straw that broke the camel's back? Or was this, you know, seriously a publisher can pull that kind of weight? Because believe me, if a publisher could pull that kind of shit all the time, somebody needs to phone me and let me know how to do it, because I'm going to start pulling that right now.
Which club is that?
Seriously, I've got Russians who can back me. You know, like we can fly them over.
Break some legs, man.
I got a marching army of associate producers that are ready to stab at a I've given them shivs already. Like they're ready to like lunge at people at a moment's notice to do something. So it's really interesting to see that, like, you know, these dynamics, and I wonder, like, what's the real story there? I imagine we'll never know. I imagine we'll never know, and that's a pity.
The true Hollywood story.
We'll probably get some leaked sources here and there saying this and that, but You know, I agree with you. We really don't know all the facts behind the story, but it does seem like we're getting more and more, especially in the review scope of things, is that, you know, we just have so much difference, just kind of like what you mentioned earlier, and it seems almost incomplete at some points. But I want to, did you have a comment about that?
I think we're putting the press as a whole in that position, though, right? Like, who do you blame at that point in time? Because first off, we're asking the press to review 20 AAA games in 1 month.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Games that are often larger in scope than ever before. How are you ever going to make it through that game, right? In addition to covering whatever's coming out next and a holiday roundup. The advertising is waning on a lot of these like particular outlets, and so they're having to do it with less staff. I mean, you can look at a lot of people in that example. In fact, a few days ago, I was actually talking with some of the PC guys, the actual print guys relating to like PC Gamer and Games for Windows and other like publication. I was like, guys, like, you know, I used to buy your publications and they were like a book.
Right. Yeah.
And now it's like a newsletter. Like, where's all the meat and potatoes of what's going on? And they're like, oh, advertising's waning. I'm like, well, is it a self-fulfilling prophecy? Like, is it because your journalistic integrity is not at the same level that it once was? I mean, if I read about a multi-SKU game, right? Like, hell, because we've been talking about Time Shift, it's easy to roll about it. You got a PlayStation 3 version. You got an Xbox 360 version. You got a PC version. The PC version does not need a supercomputer to run, right? We specifically focus on getting it into kind of an everyman sort of, you know, hands. However, when I read what the press write about a pitch, where we do it all in the same room, like literally they're all sitting shoulder to shoulder in a room and we're talking about the game. The 360 guys talking about normal maps and advanced parallax maps and how we have spherical harmonics that allow the weapon to articulate this way and that way, and Havoc 4.6 that allows in Time Shift for you to slow-mo a guy and shoot him in the face with a bullet, then run around behind him and shoot him in the back of the head and see which one of them had more momentum to drop the guy straight down. Like, that's what they're talking about. I read the PC guy and they're like, another game offers Xbox, you know, like, it's just like, oh, and more stuff that we've seen before, and more stuff that we've seen before, and more stuff that we've seen before. You know, this would be an interesting game to look for the holidays.
They're lazy, man. I just think they also get so immersed. They also get so immersed in the industry that they almost get jaded, and they almost just become these elitists, and they can't. It's like they can't have fun with games anymore. It's like, I just can't sit down with a game and enjoy the stupidness or enjoy the fun of it. I have to nitpick at every little thing. And I don't know necessarily if gamers really care about all the nitpicky stuff. All they really care about is they put it in, it looks great, and they have fun with it. And that's pretty much probably what most people care about. Not about, oh my God, there was this, you know, little jaggy way off in the distance on this tree and blah, blah, blah. Therefore, 8.0, it's automatically 2 points off. I think that's what's starting to sort of be a problem.
You know, just to add to that, Robert, one of the things that I'm sort of seeing is that, like, I feel like I have no basis for a reviewer's score. I don't know what this reviewer, the type of games they like. I don't know, you know, necessarily in some cases what they've scored other games.
They don't make that
how
easily
long they've
accessible.
been doing it. You know, like, I almost feel like I wish that there was a guy out there that I knew his life story, I knew the types of games he loved, and you know, I think that's why we have some success here with our reviews on EG, is just because people know that I fucking hate stealth games. So if I review a stealth game, I'm going to hit it just because it's not as an enjoyable experience. But I'm still going to review it from a perspective of, you know, how is it as a game? You know, and I feel like when I read some of these nondescript types of reviews, I just am completely just disengaged from that perspective. Is like, what is this guy? Does this guy stop playing Time Shift and then go play Bejeweled? I don't fucking know.
Well,
you know
what?
I think so.
Yeah, exactly.
Judging by some of the reviews I saw out there. Well, and I think that the things that they're picking about are across the board, right? Everybody wants to be first with the review, right? So
Yeah.
they're
Which is a
to
problem.
go faster. Hell, dude, when we started making games, like some of the first games that I ever worked on were for like $100,000, right? And now you're into the multi-million-dollar projects, and yet my reviews is just as long, right? Like, you've covered the same amount of paragraphs, right?
I think that's a big problem, is because the guys who are doing the reviews are so worried about getting it out on time or getting it out ahead of time or being first or the first to say this or talk about that. It's almost like they're just rushing in, like you guys said, they're probably playing Bejeweled mostly instead of really, like, you know, reviewing the game.
And the time to just review the game. I mean,
well,
you're not,
our guys,
you're not
our
gonna work your
guys
time
spend,
shift in 4 hours. Like
Exactly.
you got to put some serious time
Exactly.
into this game.
Our
you know?
guys here, they spend the time. Like Wheat and Suma and Force, like they actually spend the time and really go through it, and then they talk about it, and then they review it. It's not like we try and get the review out the day the game's out. I mean, we don't even get the game sometimes the day
Well,
it's out.
what was the review recently that everyone released? I think it was actually Halo 3. And if you remember, Halo 3 Street Date was broken. And everyone released their reviews
BioShock as well.
on Monday, right? On the Monday, it was coming out Tuesday. And everyone basically, were throwing out their 10s. But at this point, even the pre-release copies that had just gotten to the press like Friday, there was no multiplayer. Like it was not up. Granted we had the multiplayer demo, but it's like realistically, how did you come to this conclusion that the game's a 10, knowing that the multiplayer was not accessible for you guys at all? Like it's things like that.
And
too.
what about
It's
this, like the long-term success of the game? Like right now, I don't think anybody's playing the game. Sumi, you say all the time how no one on your friends list is
no
playing.
one on my friend. I always have at least 25 to 30 people online on my friends list whenever I pop on.
You're a popular guy.
And most of the people, it's all EG fans actually. But almost everybody is playing COD4 Rock Band. No one's playing Halo 3. When Halo 2 came out, I know for at least a year or two afterwards, I would always see people playing Halo 2, like always. And I just don't see it. Sure, I'm sure a ton of people still play it, but not to the same magnitude as they once did. And I mean, I think that's a discussion for
Another time.
So how the fuck does a game go from getting 10s to not getting played anymore? Okay, please.
And that's just the nature of video games, though. Today, I mean, it's like a lot of gamers today.
Where's
they move on from one game to the
fucking
next.
bargain bin.
They move on from one game to the next, which is also sort of a problem because people aren't just sitting down and enjoying games anymore. They gotta, I played this game, oh my god, but now another game's coming out, so I'm gonna go play that. And they're not sticking with the game and really enjoying the entire experience. They're spending maybe an hour or two with it, and then they got Call of Duty 4 sitting over there in the corner talking to them, yapping in their ear. So that whole rush to play everything is sort
hurting
of
the
hurting
industry, guys.
But like I think that also comes down to personal responsibility in a way, and I noticed it, and I actually toned down how I behaved in that way, and I now try and spend just time with the games that I enjoy. I don't want to rush through games to get reviews done. I'm just going to play the games that I might enjoy and I'm interested in. I don't feel like rushing through and playing 20 games that came out this month or whatever.
Thanks for that presidential speech there, Suma.
Vote Suma in 2008.
Especially, but it's true because you're going to spend all of January and February either opening what you got for Christmas and playing that, or bitching that there's no games.
Yeah.
You're going to come around to like June and July, and you'll be like, "There's nothing to play, man. Like they need to release some games here."
Yeah.
Because you spent all your time rushing through them in the fall.
Yeah, actually, one of our users wrote in and said, was actually like, hey, I'd love if you ask Kyle, there's a lot of FPSs out on the market right now. Is there any reason why now was chosen to release the game versus, say, first quarter 2008 when there may be like less AAA FPS titles?